Welcome. My name is Marguerite Winter. I'm the manager of public programs and partnerships here at the Chicago Architecture Biennial, and I'm pleased to welcome you today to CAP Studio. This is our new year-round exhibition space that's here to explore, design, and present innovative ideas in the architecture field and beyond. Currently on view around you is Architecture of Reparations, which incorporates the study of public policy, architectural history, and reparations to tell the story of erasure in Bronzeville, a historic neighborhood in the south side of Chicago. Today we are delighted to have Chicago poet and activist Chima Ikoro read select works from Gwendolyn Brooks in original poetry inspired by the installation. Chima is an interdisciplinary writer and a first-generation Nigerian from the south side of Chicago. Alongside her friends, Naira, co-founder of a mutual aid abolitionist collective called the Black Rising. She's the community organizing editor at the Southside Weekly, where she creates The Exchange, the Weekly's poetry corner. Naira is also a teaching artist at Young Chicago Authors, where she spent many years as a student. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I never know what to do when someone's reading my bio. I'm like, oh, that's me. But peace, everybody. My name is Chima. Folks also call me Naira. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be sharing this intimate space with y'all. This artwork and this installation in general is just really beautiful and really important. And I feel like a lot of the work that I naturally create is influenced by the South Side and my experiences with building community or trying to like scrounge around for community that has been erased, being angry, being happy, and like those things working in tandem as well. And I feel like that's also where I draw a lot of inspiration from Gwendolyn Brooks' work that also kind of speaks to that like joy in community and also that those feelings of grief that evolve from like love for our communities or trying to understand where a lack comes from. And so, like Margaret said, I'm going to be sharing some pieces of my own. I wrote two for specifically for this, and then I also have some pieces that I had previously written that I'll share with y'all as well that I feel kind of speak to just like the general theme and vibe that we're going with this afternoon. Sounds good? Cool. So for sure, the pieces, well, two of the pieces that I'll read of Gwendolyn Brooks come from A Street in Bronzeville, her first book of poetry that focuses on the urban Black experience, right? She wasn't born in Chicago, but spent a lot of her life in Chicago, was raised in Chicago, specifically on the South Side. And so she wrote this first collection about experiences living in Bronzeville as well. I'll read two of those pieces, but first I wanted to start with her piece called Paul Robeson, just because I feel like this piece speaks to community a lot as well. So I'll start with Paul Robeson by Gwendolyn Brooks. That time, we all heard it, cool and clear, cutting across the hot grit of the day. The major voice, the adult voice, foregoing rolling river, foregoing tearful tale of bale and barge, and other symptoms of an old despond. Warning, in music words, devout and large, that we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond. And that's that piece. How are y'all feeling? Awesome, okay. Y'all gotta give me some energy though. I didn't write it, but y'all are clapping for Gwendolyn Brooks. So thank you. Y'all don't have to snap for me, but you always gotta snap for Gwendolyn Brooks. Yeah. Okay, for sure. Cool, so let's keep the ball rolling. This first piece by me is called Concrete to Shoreline. Started as a journal entry and turned into a sonnet somehow. Aren't those the best ones? Concrete to Shoreline. As a retired outside baby, I learned that scraped knees aren't the worst wounds. Now, my tucked lips hold back tidal waves. These days, journal holds the rain I cannot see or take shelter from. But when I'm trying to stay dry, it's like mopping the ocean. I make sand castles on these curves. Something soft to play in or get buried under. Dye the white parts black. Call it a candlelight vigil or revolutionary. These waves make sharp glass and litter soft and call it sand someday. This I know. What once could make me bleed will become smooth if I make enough salt water to cleanse the wound. And that's that piece. Thank you. So like I said, a lot of my poetry is inspired by growing up on the South Side. I'm from the hundreds, from Beverly Woods. When my parents first came to this country, they moved to South Shore. And I mean, I guess I was born in Chatham, but I don't know. I was born in Mercy Hospital, so I can't technically claim Chatham. But yeah, I feel like so much of, recently I wrote a lot, or I did some interviews with some writers, and some of my questions were about how like where you're from influences who you are. And I think that like, I don't know, Chicagoans are like very much where they're from to a fault sometimes, but I feel like the amount of like culture and experience that's specific to where we are, which might be a result of how segregated the city is, still like informs our personalities, and I feel like that's not something to be ashamed of. It's beautiful and it's specific, and so I shamelessly write about those parts of me. The next poem is titled Brick Song. I wrote this piece about the Dan Ryan for a photo essay that we did called Firsthand Segregation with WTCW. And it talks about, the photo essay is called The Structures That Divide Us, and it talks about the built infrastructure that keeps the South Side segregated. So this piece is titled The Brick Song. At times, if you listen well enough, the rhythm of the Dan Ryan mimics bricks being bulldozed. A parrot recalling a sound it heard enough times to recreate. Development is a losing game. If I had a pair of shoes to string up on a telephone wire for every black family that lived before the concrete was ever mixed, memorials are also a losing game. For you, we were a spark, forgotten as quickly as we came. So beautiful and so fleeting, like the red car or rattling Chevy I track with my eyes as I wait on the train platform. It is too late to protest the transformation of this land. After all, I use the tombstones of family homes as a passageway daily. It zigzags through the bleeding hoods like crack, a chasm, splitting a heart in half. That is the sacrifice of development, built on top of sparks, beautiful and easy to forget. Bricks that sing as they fall. For the final frame, I imagine them harmonizing to their demise. Development is a losing game. And that's that piece. Thank you. I also wrote that piece while I was listening to Love is a Losing Game by Amy Winehouse. There's that. But yeah. The next piece I'm going to read is by Gwendolyn Brooks. It's from a street in Bronzeville. It's titled Vacant Lot. The Vacant Lot by Gwendolyn Brooks. Mrs. Coley's 3-flat brick isn't here anymore. All done with seeing her fat little form burst out of the basement door, and with seeing her African son-in-law, rightful heir to the throne, with his great white strong, cold squares of teeth and his little eyes of stone, and with seeing the squat fat daughter letting in the men when majesty has gone for the day, and letting them out again. And that's that piece. I really like, one thing I really like about this anthology or collection of poems by Gwendolyn Brooks is that they're so specific. And I feel like a lot of times poetry feels like it has to write about everything, which I do sometimes, and I have a poem that I'm gonna read that's kind of like that. But I also feel like that almost like a slice of life, just like a piece of something. It's like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, it's probably not for you. You know what I mean? And I think that's also like, that speaks to how specific it is to title an anthology of poems, A Street in Bronzeville. It's like not just the side of this, not just a state, not just a specific city, not just a specific side of the city, not just a specific neighborhood, like very specific to her experiences, which I think is very beautiful. And also like something that the South Side is deserving of. Yeah, cool. Y'all feeling okay? I'm boring out to death. Cool. Okay, cool. Lovely. So the next piece I'll read is titled The Negro Speaks of Dry Land After the Negro Speaks of Rivers by Langston Hughes. I wrote this piece in honor of my childhood friend Adam, who was shot last year. I've known vacant lots. I've known vacant lots ancient as gang signs and older than I'll bring your bike back. I'll bring your bike back. I promise. My soul has grown gardens by force, like the vacant lots. I drank from hoses when my dogs were young. I built my friendships near train tracks, the same ones that lulled me to sleep. I looked upon my homies and imagined us growing old on this side of earth. I heard singing at funerals when some didn't make it, and I've seen pallbearers without a single gray hair. I've known vacant lots, ancient, unpredictable vacant lots. My soul has grown gardens like the vacant lots. And that's that piece. I think another thing about my poems is that I often say that I try to like challenge the shame that's associated with grief. I feel like sometimes folks may be afraid to grieve like outwardly, or maybe like grieve through their work and then feel like shame for it. But I feel like, as I said earlier, that like grief in tandem with like love is always like a valid and like important emotion to acknowledge. Okay, cool. The next piece is titled Streets. And I wrote this piece after the city of Chicago put into place the curfew that tells young folks that they cannot be outside after a certain time. But that rule only applies to folks who cannot afford tickets to events. And so the kids who are fortunate enough to be able to pay to go to Lala or like buy stuff at the water tower are the ones who get to be outside, which targets a very specific group of young people. So this piece is titled Streets. The way we refer to young people changes depending on where you're at, like streets. In some places they have names. In other places they're just numbers. Lake, 71st, both running parallel. The difference is a tax bracket, a shade of skin, a tone of voice. Imagine clear-cutting a forest, leveling every home and habitat, and leaving the small things that scurry through the branches with no place to burrow in. So these small things, they file into the city, take up shelter in the crevices of Gold Coast, nestle into the spaces between buildings on Michigan Ave, rebuild their community under Cloud Gate. Would you call that an infestation, or is that reparations? In the summertime, every block is too hot to stand on. Don't you know that black attracts heat? The kids run from east to west, from south to north, like streets. 1 minute they were numbers, and the next they are names. Which plot in the ground should I slide to if I want to be safe? Which landmark is symbolic of home base? Or are we supposed to keep running? When bullets hit your beautiful buildings and the glass sprouts branches, they tell us we must miss our trees, as if they were stomped out and not cut down, as if a kid could carry a chainsaw or hold the responsibility of squandering resources they never got the chance to see, let alone waste. Did you forget that they are small things, looking for a place to hug and laugh and argue? Adults fight wherever they want. In Florida, 18 cops opened fire to retrieve a stolen UPS truck and shot up the whole expressway, killed the driver that was taken hostage, and a random bystander wears their curfew. White boys in Lincoln Park getting drunk and crashing divvy bikes, fighting outside the bars wears their curfew. The suburban kids that flood in from the outskirts like roaches, like rats, leave garbage on every inch of South Loop on Lollapalooza weekend, trash Douglas Park for Summer Smash, North Coast Fest, jam-packing the emergency rooms on bad drug trips curfew, perhaps. The difference is a tax bracket, a shade of skin, a tone of voice. Lake and 71st, a number, a name, running parallel, running side by side, holding hands to feel safe. Never called them kids. How can anyone even call them home when you leveled all their trees? Claim you never called them outside either. So call them streets. Tell them to keep running. And that's that piece. Thank you, thank you. Lovely. Do y'all mind if I read some more poems?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the next piece is titled To Our Flags. And this was the first poem that I put in the exchange, which is the poetry corner that I do at Southside Weekly. And I was kind of mad when I wrote it. But I think that with some things I justify my anger, especially if it's well directed. But I'm going to clean it up for y'all. So, cool. This piece is titled To Our Flags, After Meditations in an Emergency by Cameron Awkward Rich. The first time I got pepper sprayed at point blank, I pretend we're all on the ground praying, hoping a medic will spot us. We're waving our bandanas in the air like flags. I pledge my allegiance to that paisley, stained and covered in sweat. Some people open their eyes in the morning and just live. I clench my teeth while I sleep, grinding in between my dreams. I wake up and it breaks my heart, the flight of children and doves all the same. The city of tents on spikes so the unhoused can stay restless. Women hawking roses for graves, all of them break my heart. Who needs hallucinogens when you can get a concussion? Free of charge, if you pretend. In reality, a slice of my paychecks pays for all this rah-rah-ish, all this riot gear. You know what's cheaper than a police officer? A perk. But everybody's on the front line and we're sober, getting our butts kicked for the low cost of $1.8 billion a year. And the sanitary workers that clean our blood up off the sidewalk need a raise. I pledge my allegiance to them people too. But back to my troops, who you know can get caught with their empty hands up and still get a 21-gun salute. And the whole world will say their name and never even know what it means. And strangers will tag their praises onto walls that get painted over in neighborhoods where people like that used to live. When a cop dies, the whole neighborhood stops. The funeral procession is a long parade of police cars and fire trucks. My soldiers deserve the same energy, so we organize and stop the whole neighborhood too. And the cops gonna show up whether they're invited or not. But we got fire trucks, paddy wagons, jail buses, and garbage trucks too. When Washington Park got hit by the blizzard last year, wasn't a dang salt truck in sight. But they're at this protest though. Hey, have the mayor come out and speak a few words so she can get stomped into the earth where our soldiers been laid. Some of us really know what dirt tastes like. That's what it takes to be a soldier, or so it seems. And I pledge my allegiance to each and every one of y'all. Hand on my heart. Hand on my stupid heart. And that's that piece. Thank you. It's very true. There were no salt trucks. It was very icy the winter of 2021, was it? And people couldn't get out of their houses. And I was like, that's crazy. But there were always salt trucks blocking off the streets at protests. But yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna keep the ball rolling. I'm going to read another piece. Actually, these two pieces I wrote specifically for this, inspired by some of the work that I saw and just the general mission of this installation. It's kind of like a two-pack. It talks about experiences I've had, or it speaks to thoughts that came from memories of riding in the car with my dad, who, like I said, came to this country in the 70s. The first one is titled Dominoes, and the second one is titled Explorer. This is Dominoes. Sometimes, my dad would drive through this neighborhood where many of the houses looked quite similar. As my adult memory mixes with the feeling of a younger self, cheek pressed against the cold glass, falling asleep, or dreaming with my eyes open, what the buildings remind me of are dominoes, stacked still as concrete. gray stone statues. Every year, the number on the buildings gets swapped for the wide, curvy, minimalist type font and washed of their color. Every year, I notice more and more marching in like toy soldiers and falling in line. My father says, I watched Bronzeville change with my own eyes. Came to this country before white folks felt emboldened to make laps around the park in their sports bras, before a single golden doodle peed on the corner where the Hammer Palmer mansion stands. Article reads, demolition by neglect, and I call it a catch-all. Reads, the city is looking for an excuse to level what they do not see as valuable. And I could be talking about anything. And I could be talking about anywhere. And I could be talking about anyone. And that's that piece. Yeah, I mean, of course, when I was a kid, I didn't understand what gentrification was. And I didn't understand what my dad meant every time we drove through Bronzeville, because we lived very far south. And so sometimes my dad would take Lakeshore, he would take the streets to kind of like talk, because when he first came to this country, he was a cab driver. And so he like knows how to get everywhere without the GPS. And he's like, we're just gonna take Western all the way down. I'm like, there's an expressway, why don't we get on the expressway? But he likes to kind of talk about, oh, there used to be a church right here, or oh, there never used to be houses there, or there used to be houses there. But every time we drove through Bronzeville, he was like, it looks so different over here. It looks so different over here. And I never understood why that mattered to him, or like what feeling he was trying to articulate until, of course, I got older and was like, oh, now I understand. Especially when I moved to Hyde Park in my adulthood and visited Bronzeville, and I was like, I see what you mean now. I see what you mean. And I think like as an immigrant, he didn't like understand the discomfort that he was feeling, or like didn't really like know how to like put that like to like quantify that discomfort. But yeah. The next piece that I wrote in light of conversations that I've had with my dad, inspired by this installation, is titled Explorer. My dad says, don't make a U-turn at the intersection as we leave La Fruteria on Commercial. Identified a corner, round and warm. Tells me, before he owned a house or had a credit score, a bunch of plainclothes cops in an unmarked car snatched him up and showed him what urban renewal feels like. I don't know how to ask if he was sure those were even cops. A transplant tells me tales of their South Shore escapades as if I am the one that's new here. I guess I moved further north with every apartment. But my mom has only ever lived south, like far south. So far, when I moved to Hyde Park, she told my aunt that I lived on the north side. Things are different now, I say, making a U-turn in front of an unmarked Ford Explorer. The license plate says Michigan. And that's that piece. Thank you. Okay. I have just two more pieces for y'all, if that's cool. Another original piece by me, and then another piece by Gwendolyn Brooks to close it out, because how else? Okay. This next piece is titled, We'll See You Next Thanksgiving. And I won't give it a disclaimer. Well, actually I will. I think that like, what bothers me the most about this piece is that like, no matter how many times I read it, it's still relevant, and that disturbs me a little bit. We'll see you next Thanksgiving. My parents have been citizens for so long, and yet the weight of their past undocumented lives still has a seat at the Thanksgiving table. My mom tells me not to carry my Nigerian passport to the airport. Tells me drive slow. When I ask her if she can promise that these things will keep me safe, she is quiet. Maybe if I run. Maybe if I leave, I'll be safe. Maybe if I leave all my kids in heaven, they won't get sent back too soon. My kids are perfect. Why is there a factory recall on their bodies? They keep getting sent back to the maker like they're faulty. They come back to heaven with organs missing, replaced with newspaper. Their articles detail their friends are dying too. God sees the corpse. He knows that's not how he sent you down there, but he comforts me, says they put holes in his son too. Maybe I'll stay alive if I don't leave the house, unless the water in my sink ends up somehow full of lead. Brown, purple, black, blue, red, and white cops turn browns, purple and blue and invisible. Left home to get some bread. Came back like Swiss cheese. We get flattened under the ham's hammer. I've spent all my free time sandwiched between the grains of time, falling through the hourglass too soon, too quick. And they say gone but never forgotten. How can anyone forget? The video is still on my timeline with no censor. The gun, clapping behind a brown back, cheering on the cries for help, the verdict. The images of a body same shade as mine burned in my brain forever. How can anyone forget? The images of brown kids wrapped in foil blankets, like casseroles, waiting as their innocence goes under a flame. They never leave unchanged. White people love casseroles. So convenient. Just throw a bunch of things together and hope it turns out good. Just like the game plan for the kids detained by ICE. Watch as you pass them off to your right. The ham and the turkey, the yam and the greens, the scorn and the suffering, and the grave, if you please, leave it unmarked. Claim they can't read anyway. They work so many hours to visit the graveside anyway. They work so many hours but can't afford a proper burial anyway. I hope your next Thanksgiving dinner is fun. Please include our names in your prayers as you say grace. Make sure you wash the blood off your hands before prepping the food. Y'all see America as a melding pot on your back burners and you're sick of it. We know. We have watched you stir the melding pot with a short spoon so the pieces at the bottom always burn when you make your toast. I hope you pour one out for my dead homies. I hope you eat good. Smile big as you pass the yams, past the greens, past the turkey, past the homeless man on your way home who was only out there because you sold a block of Section 8 housing to private investors. I hope you see brown fingerprints on your strawberries. And maybe you'll wash them off with water so brown you lie to a black person to tell them it's safe to drink. Maybe then you'll pass bills like casseroles so that we can build a wall around you so the rest of us can stay safe. And that's that piece. Thank you. Okay, cool. I have one more piece for y'all by Gwendolyn Brooks, and then I'll let y'all go. And this piece is titled Kitchenette Building. This piece speaks to Brooks' memories of living in tiny apartments that were manipulated, like single family apartments that were manipulated to be like multiple family homes. So if you know what a kitchenette is, it's really tiny. You can cook in it, but not really much else. Kitchenette Building by Gwendolyn Brooks. We are things of dry hours and the involuntary plain, grayed in and gray. Dream makes a giddy sound, not strong like rent or feeding a wife or satisfying a man. But could a dream send up through onion fumes its white and violet, fight with fried potatoes, and yesterday's garbage ripening in the hall, flutter or sing an aria down these rooms? Even if we were willing to let it in, had time to warm it, keep it very clean, anticipate a message, let it begin, we wonder, but not well, not for a minute. Since number 5 is out of the bathroom now, we think of lukewarm water, hope to get in it. And that's that piece. Thank you all so much. Like I said, my name's Chima. Folks call me Naira. I'm a teacher and a writer and all that fun stuff. And it's been a joy to read some poems for y'all today. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chima, and thank you so much to everyone for being here today, and we hope you'll enjoy the exhibition and stick around for a little bit. So thank you so much.